guys, welcome back to my channel. I'm your host Miss KK and this is your weekly show on all things money. On this show we get to dissect things related to personal, family and business finances. My hope is that by the time we get to the end of this series you'll be better equipped to make sound financial decisions. If you're new here, welcome and thank you so much for stopping by. Please consider clicking the subscription button in the comment below so that you can be notified every time we upload a new video. And if you are already a subscriber, thank you very much. I really appreciate your support and your interaction in the comment box. So today we are speaking on a very important concept, which is the concept of net worth. How does one calculate how much one is really worth? And we are speaking it in context of a budget, a balance sheet. Okay, sorry, I'm so much into budgeting. Balance sheet. So what is a balance sheet and how can a balance sheet help you assess how much you are worth? So typically a balance sheet is normally used by companies to tell investors how much a company is worth. But we are going to be speaking about a balance sheet from a personal perspective. How do I compile my personal balance sheet and what does my balance sheet tells me? So basically a balance sheet, just like a budget, have two main components. Like we've mentioned before, a budget has two main components, which is your money coming in and your money going out. On the other hand, a balance sheet has two things. It's asset that you own and liability that you owe, i.e. resource that you control and resource that you are using for other people that will result in either money coming in or money going out. So that's basically the two components of the balance sheet, is how much assets you have, how much liability do you owe, and your asset minus your liability will give you your net worth. Okay, so take a typical example on how you go about assessing your balance sheet. You sort of need to go back and understand which items do you own that are classified as assets and which items do you owe that are classified as a liability. Remember, at a high level we are saying an asset is anything that you own, i.e. it belongs to you. You control it, and because of the virtue that you have this asset, it's going to result in some sort of future income flowing to you. So you'll be reaping the benefit of that item in future. So take a typical example of my plant here. So I can typically say my plant here is an asset because in future, if I keep watering it, caring for it, tendering it, pruning it, it's going to generate fruits that I can either consume myself or that I can sell and generate an income, or someone can rent my plant, prune it for a period of time, harvest whatever it is that they're harvesting for that particular period and pay me some sort of rent, and in that way I still benefit from my asset. So basically when evaluating whether something an asset, you need to ask yourself, do I own the asset? Is it going to produce something for me in future in form of an inflow, in form of an income to me? So personally, you now need to think about what type of assets that you can have. You can have physical assets or you can have intangible assets. Physical assets are things like a house that you have, maybe the house that is fully paid off, or even if it's not fully paid off, that you are either staying in. The fact that you are staying in that house, it's giving you some sort of benefit in terms of occupancy. Perhaps it's a house that you have that you've rented out, maybe a holiday home where you are generating income, or perhaps an item that you have that you can sell. Let's say you have a car that is fully paid off and you want to sell it and you're going to be making a profit from that car. So basically those are the type of assets that are called tangible assets. You might have intangible assets that are not physically that you cannot physically touch. For example, I don't know if cash could potentially qualify as, both. So if you have maybe cash in the bank, or you have an investment with maybe a particular investment house or a particular bank, and that investment is generating dividend for you or it's generating interest for you. So basically those are sort of assets that you need to do. So personally, you need to go and write down all the assets that you own and add them up. So for me, when I was doing this, I first came into this analysis of doing asset when I was applying for a home loan, because the bank essentially looks at how much are you worth in determining how much loan they will give you. So at that point, I was being asked a whole bunch of questions by the bank that I later realized that it's actually being used in formulating my balance sheet for the bank to determine how much I qualify for a home loan, because the bank needs to be able to determine whether I can be able to afford whatever loans that they are going to give me. So they were asking me, do I own a car? Do I have any other property? Do I have any savings? How much are in my savings? Do I have any maybe intangible asset that where I earn royalty? Maybe if you're a musician and you're getting royalty from a particular, a radio that plays your music, and all of those things I was giving to the bank for the bank to determine how much I am actually worth in terms of my assets. So we've dealt with now your assets. Your assets are items you own. They will result in an inflow to you in future. So assets and income, they work hand in hand. Of course, it doesn't mean that if you have an asset, you're not going to be spending any money, i.e. money is not going to be leaving your pocket to be able to maintain this asset. Of course, you're going to do it. If you have a house, your geyser is going to break at some point, your water leakage is going to come at some point. You need to pay an alarm to keep your house safe. Similarly with my plant here, if I want to generate fruits from it, I must be able to, buy fertilizers for it, pay a gardener, pay for water. So those are maintenance costs that I need to incur to upkeep this asset in order for me to be able to generate fruits from it. If I let it all grown out with weeds, then I'm not going to harvest anything. Similarly, if you have a house and you just don't do paintings, you don't do renovation, over time you're not going to be getting tenants because no one really wants to stay in an old rusted house, etc. So that was all we had for assets. Then on the other side we have a liability. Okay, assume my book here is my liability. I don't know if you can see it. Assume my book here is my liability. So liability is something that I owe as a result of a past event. So let's say when I bought this house that I had of mine, or this farm that I have of mine here, I borrowed a loan to be able to buy this farm. So the loan is going to be sitting with me as a liability. Why is this a liability? Because in future, money is going to leave my pocket for me to be able to pay off this liability. So every month I pay the bank a monthly installment for me to be able to pay back this liability. So really, liability is money that you owe that will result in money leaving out of your pocket. One of the reasons why people tend to argue a car is a loan, or if your house is not paid off is a debt, is because if you have an asset that is intricately linked to a debt, most of the time your debt is likely to outweigh the value of the asset at the beginning of the period, because the interest rate that you normally get charged on the loan is a lot higher than the income that you're going to be earning from the asset at the beginning of the period. So over time, as you pay off your liability, it will decrease, and then the return that you're going to be generating from your asset will increase, and the asset will start benefiting you. So again, you need to go back and see, how much do I owe people? And this is where we now need to be realistic ourselves, because most of the time, yes, we want to go and see, I have an investment here, I have a car that I've rented out to a friend, I have a house, blah blah blah. But when it comes to now us being honest with our debt, we want to wishy-washy and leave out the debt that the money you lent from, or you borrowed from your friend last month. So basically, you need to be honest with yourself and determine how much money do you owe anyone, including the banks, including your family, including your spouse, including your relatives, etc. So for me, at that time when I was looking for a house, I really didn't have any debt. I didn't have a clothing account. I didn't have a clothing account. I didn't have a furniture account. I didn't have a cell phone contract. I didn't have a home loan. I was going to acquire a home loan at the time. I didn't have a car loan. I didn't have a credit card. I didn't have, what else can you buy on credit? So basically, those are all the things that you're going to be determining that you need to bring in when calculating how much your liability is. So to really get to how much you are worth at the end of the day, right? Before we move on to get to how much you're worth at the end of the day. So what's the cost of having this debt? The cost of having this debt is the interest that you're going to be charged to maintain this debt. So most of the time, if you borrow money from a friend, it's likely going to be interest free if you pay back within a period of time. So with a bank, it's very rare that you get an interest free loan. So somehow, somewhere, you're going to be paying interest. So what you want to do is, if you're going to be buying assets worth credit, you want to make sure that you are almost 100% guaranteed that the return that you're going to be making from the asset and the interest exceeds the interest that you're going to be charging from on the liability. So in that way, you are making a profit, because you get an income, you pay an interest, then you're still left with some money. So what we then do to get to how much we are worth, we take this asset minus this liability, and that will give us how much we are worth. So assume your assets are worth $100, your liabilities are worth $60, your net value, how much you are worth, is $40, right? Whereas if your assets were worth 80 and your liability is 100, that means you are in a net liability position. Overall, you are insolvent. Even if you were to sell all your assets, you won't be able to settle your liability. So that's how it works. So this, how much you are worth, can have an impact on various things, including your affordability of the debt. Like I've mentioned, when I was doing the home loan, I was doing this net worth assessment. So if you are worth more, if your assets are way more than your liability, the bank is going to consider you less risky. So like they are likely to give you a low interest rate. Obviously they take into consideration some other factors that we're not talking about here as yet, but if your assets are worth more than your liabilities and you have a good credit score, etc., they will give you the debt at a low interest rate, compared to someone that has always defaulted on their loan, who is almost close to break even, i.e. their assets are almost equaling their liability. The bank consider that person slightly riskier, and the interest rate that they are likely to be charged on the loan is going to be higher. So basically that's the assessment that you need to do. So how does then your assets and your liability feature into your budget? So remember, we said budget is income minus expenses, and balance sheet is asset minus liability. So your assets are normally linked to your income and your liability are normally linked to your expenses. So as you do your monthly budget, you have your money coming in and you have your money going out. So that money that is left, you normally either using it to buy asset or to spend on expenses. So if you spend on expenses, let's say I buy groceries at the end of the month, right? That grocery, I'm going to consume it. In future, I'm not going to benefit anything from having bought that grocery because it's already consumed. Contrast that with an asset. An asset you've bought, yes, you've spent the money to buy the farm, but that farm is going to generate something in future. So that is the distinction. So your income can be used to acquire assets in order for you to be able to generate more income in future. Similarly, your income can also be used to pay off your debt in order for you to improve your net worth, because the more you reduce your liability, the more your net worth increases. The more your net worth increases, the more you'll be able to have room in your budget to be able to acquire more assets and more liability. So basically that's all we had for today. Thank you very much. If you have any comment, please leave it in the comment below. And if you haven't subscribed, please hit that subscription button below so that you can be notified every time I upload a new video. Thank you so much. Stay safe and sanitize.